Good morning, everyone. My name is Salva. I'm the VP of Marketing at Servion, and I'll be your moderator for today's session. Thanks, everyone, for taking the time to join us for this webinar, From AI Hype to CX Impact and ROI, and specifically choosing the right voice agentic AI agent. Now, if you're here, that's probably because of all the hype that's going on in the agentic AI world now. And I'm sure you'd agree that there's 1,000 questions that pop up when you think about agentic AI and how do you go about doing this. As to where do you start, what does it cost, what are the benefits that you can actually reap, things like that. Now, we've got three speakers, all from different vantage points. Now, we've got an industry analyst, we've got an investor, and we've got a global systems integrator who are going to share their individual views on this. A few quick house rules before we get started. All participants are muted. You can post your questions using the chat window, and we'll take your questions at the end of the session. You will also receive a recording of the webinar after the session. And with that, I'll let the speakers introduce themselves. Nicholas, we'll start off with you.
Nicholas Dukushkovsky, longtime industry veteran in the CX space, now an industry analyst at CACube.
Thank you, Nicholas. Hi, everyone. I'm Shrey. I'm a partner within EMK Capital and lead all things AI, data, and tech based out of Dubai, and excited to discuss this hot topic with all of you.
And Bruce Isaac, I'm the Chief Growth Officer at Servion, and like Nicholas, have been in the industry for a very long time. Shrey's much younger than I am, so he hasn't been in quite as long. But I'm really looking forward to this session. As I was saying before, we'd had some really fun discussions about how to prepare for this. So I'm really looking forward to have two great experts on the panel with me, and of course, Salva's help, as always.
Yeah, thank you. Nicholas, do you want to kickstart things?
Sure. What I'd like to do first is maybe frame the conversation looking at things from a market perspective. Number one, let's face it, customer self-service has now been the top priority for customer service, CX, for almost 2 years. And it's interesting to understand why. Number one, the pressure from the top, whether it's board, executive teams, everybody is pushing down and hard for AI adoption. And customer service remains, with probably coding, among the top priority use cases. Two, and it's interesting, the first wave of AI project has actually delivered measurable gains. It's often in the form of a reduced average handling time, reduced after-call work. So they are real wins, but those wins have been hard to translate into hard dollar ROI. And the expectation for the ROI measured in dollars to be gained from AI is still there. So now all businesses are turning to AI for self-service as a way to deliver on that ROI promise. Three, self-service and the old clunky IVRs have been up for renewal for actually longer than we wanted. And it's important as part of this conversation to remember that voice remains the primary engagement channel for most contact centers. Four, when we look at the market through the lenses of consumers, adoption of Gen AI is actually going with better than everyone would have thought. And it's changing the expectation. Consumers are getting more comfortable interacting with AI, and they would like the same experience when they are reaching out to a business for customer service. And finally, from my standpoint, it's probably one of the most exciting aspects is we start to see AI able to create experiences, do things that were not possible before. So think of a concierge agent that can guide customers through their navigation, answer question, maybe book an appointment. In the past, each of those experiences would be handled by a siloed bot. And now with AI, we're able to offer a single experience, regardless of the different departments that behind the scene are helping assisting customers on that hand. So number one, customer self-service top the agenda. Number two, there's been a massive, some would say an insane VC investment in the technology. Traxion is tracking the top 180 agentic customer service companies. It's finding that they receive shy of $6 billion in funding. And there's probably even more when we look at voice AI. Last October, I tried to map the space. I found 650 players. And Shrey did a refresh a few weeks, month ago. If I almost doubled that number. So it's completely insane. Now, what it means is, number one, the good news. We have breakthrough technologies and we have plethora of options. The bad news is we have a plethora of options. It's getting very hard to make sense of all those options. And candidly, many vendors are making very, very similar claims of similar stories. So it's so hard for practitioners. And at the same time, projects continue to be hard. And there's something I think we want to really go deep into is voice AI, because right now what I see is that the expectation it has to be part of phase one or to come very quickly after, and it comes with a slew of very specific consideration that hopefully we'll be able to unpack. So this is why today we're having this conversation.
Thanks, Nicholas. And with that, before we get any further with this, now why did we want to focus on voice agentic AI specifically? Now, as you can see, this is a very interesting slide. Voice remains one of the most important channels and the most complex. Now, if you look at the complexity involved in voice, you've got latency, you've got interruptions, you've got emotions, accents, and real-time integrations. All of these need to work in real time now. That's making it one of the most important and the complex channels in the contact center right now.
Yeah, and
Those
I'll
want to
just
dive.
through my career, many of our clients have really wanted to move off voice to lower costs, to provide alternate channels to their customers. And if you look at that slide, we've ultimately, you don't have to bring it back up again. We ultimately really failed to move the dial. Voice remained the most important channel, and with agentic AI, with voice, it's becoming even more dominant. So
absolutely,
I think all those efforts have come to none, and it's just going to get voice is going to dominate more. So I think that's why we decided to focus on this. Nicholas, you probably have some thoughts here.
Yeah, 100% agree. And it's not just for a customer to interact with a business, but for many other modalities of interaction with system and technology. Voice is back, and the beauty is now that we start with all those technology to see a new art of the possible. The discussion of getting rid of voice is off the table. Now, what I think we should be doing for our audience is to try to unpack a little bit why voice AI is so specific and so complex. So, and I can start and to give a few ideas. And by no means I'm trying to tell people, my God, it's too complicated, don't do it. It's just to appreciate what it takes to build and deliver a voice AI solution. And many of the vendors, will touch on some of them, have actually addressed those issues. So Selva mentioned latency. So AI sometimes can take some time to respond. With voice, you have to shoot for less than 1 second response time. And you have to support that second large volumes. Two, there's this notion of turn detection. So what is a turn? When we speak over each other, like what we did. So it's hard for the system to figure out when one is done with talking and the other is taking on. With chat, we hit return, that tells a turn. With voice, we need to figure it out. And in many cases, it becomes now a new model specialized to figure out the end of turn. And we have to deal with interruptions, sometimes multiple speakers, because even in a consumer to business customer service conversation, the consumer may be talking with someone else, so we can have multiple voices. Audio quality is a key consideration. So at minimum, you want to reduce noise reduction. Sometimes you want to remove some actions or reduce their impact. We may have to deal with multiple languages. So English and Spanish are pretty well covered, but it's only a fraction of the world. And there are so many countries where you have different languages, you may have dialects. So sometimes you need to have different models for different languages. And we had historically a model where speech would be translated into text to speech. Now there's new models. Speech to speech. We want also to uncover emotion. Emotion can be detected by analyzing the audio signals. It's actually one of the best and most effective way, rather than reading the text to figure out exactly the mood of people. So I'm going to stop here. Again, I don't want to frighten anyone, but I want people to understand that with voice comes a slew of technical specificities that needs to be addressed.
Shrey, anything to add on that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I was just going to add like to what Nicholas said. So this is the technical part of it, which is what I call the visible layer for any interaction that you see. This is what you experience when you're using the voice model. But then there is this invisible layer, or what I call sort of the real operating layer, even beyond just the conversational style, the tone, the latency, the turn detection. There comes, data quality. There comes CRM integration, auditability, monitoring, FinOps, so cost controls, QA. And so this entire process, so this, the success of the deployment is very little about the actual technology, but the actual service design. And so which is why successful voice pilots need to see not just the technology, but the entire layer of deployment, whether that is, the visible one or the real operating layer that sits below.
Yeah, I was going to say exactly the same thing. Like where there's a slide we used often, and I think most people have used it. This a number of agentic AI projects that have failed. That's a well-known stat. But I think one of the, especially in voice, one of the reasons for that is you can build. In fact, I have built my own agentic AI agent for voice. It wasn't very good, but more apt people could actually build a good one. But that's the easy part of the job, frankly, and the tools that are available are pretty good at doing that. But that is just the very first step, or the tiny step. And it's all these other elements that I think that are critical to the success, and why deploying this is a little bit more complicated than people think. But not that some of the governance and security issues obviously extremely important. The observability, we'll talk about cost in a second, but the testing and evaluation environment, because a lot of this is going to be A/B testing. So there's a lot of work beyond just building, your first agent to have a successful project.
100%. I use the analogy of a three-legged stool. You have the core technologies for doing the voice interaction. Then you have what I call the tool sets. Is all the tools that, together with the technology, create the system to manage the initial deployment as well as the ongoing continuous optimization. It can be the testing. It can be the monitoring, it can be all the security aspect of things. So now I know we're gonna discuss later a little bit pricing, but you have baked into the technology mechanism and tools to actually optimize token consumption. That could become a key consideration. So 2 is the tool set, and 3 is the project life cycle, from pilot to production and ongoing optimization, continuous optimization. You need methodology, you need know-how, you need tool, and this is really the foundation of any selection: the technology, the tool set, and how you're going to run the project, the life cycle of a project.
That sounds good. Yeah, and then, maybe into the little bit of the more specifics now, maybe just around what we talked with Nicholas, what you described at the very start, the sort of vendor selection part of this. Maybe I'll hand it to you first to sort of give that, and then Shrey, I know you have a strong opinion here, but
when you have so many, and part of the challenges when you practitioners is traditionally when you want to buy a capability, you shop in one category. And in the case of conversational AI, you have very different categories. And so number one, and there's no specific orders, is hyperscalers. They've added to all their cloud services some AI capability, voice AI capabilities, agent building capabilities. So AWS, Google, Microsoft, to put our clearly there. Then we have the model providers. Sometimes they're called AI labs. So we have, of course, Anthropic and OpenAI, but we have also some newcomers that are specialized in voice models. 11 Labs, DeepGram, and others. And what's interesting at this juncture is, although initially they're focused on models, overwhelmed sometimes by the difficult decisions, I see companies, businesses that saying, well, maybe the safe path is to go directly with those model providers. So that's the second category. 3 are the toolkits and CPaaS. So the CPaaS player, Twilio, Infobit have added to their CPaaS some building blocks. So you're moving away. In the 2 previous cases, you would do pro code, a lot of code development. So you need to have developers. Now, with a CPaaS, you have some pre-built elements, components, and you have a little less code development to do. And we have a number of pure play companies such as Raza, Retail, Vapi. They are simplifying the development. It's still a tool for developers, but they created a number of building blocks to lower the bar to the development of a system. Then we're moving to the app providers. And here again, it's not monolithic. We have CCaaS providers. I mean, Genesys, NICE, Cognigy, of course, Amazon Connect. I can continue with the other vendors. They all have voice AI and agentic self-service solution. CRM players as well. Salesforce, ServiceNow, Zendesk. Yeah. And I can continue the enumeration. Then we have a massive category of pure play specialists. This is where we have all those numbers. What's interesting, we start to see numbers of players that have crossed the 100 million AR mark. I mean, the Cresta, Core, Sierra. But there's a long tail and there's some specialists. I know you guys are working with Parloa and Poly AI are very good in voice AI. Yeah. So you have pure play, of course, they come with a tool set. You should expect from them a fully baked tool set. And with app providers and pure plays, we are shifting more in the world of low code application development environments. So less code, more visual. You even have specialists that are kind of further abstracting the low code with the goal to give it to business players. And last but not least, we have to mention that BPOs and SIs, some are building some pre-built solution and are offering using outcome-based delivery models. They're proposing to customer solution that they're completely going to manage. So one way to look at this massive ecosystem is to look by category, understanding that what you get through the categories is a little bit different.
Yeah. And I would if I could just as an SI ourselves, we're really focused on working with the app providers and the pure play specialists. That's where that's our recommendation of where to go, if I can be more specific, because we think that there's so much connectivity, and to be fair, there's so much investment going into it. What we're seeing is some really excellent offers from both the app providers and the pure play. So yeah, we as a global SI, that would be our recommendation.
Yeah, and I would just add, I think the landscape that Nicholas ran through, it just goes to show that it's no longer just a single aisle that you're shopping from. It's an entire supermarket, which is what makes this so challenging. And so from my own experience, kind of overseeing some of the voice AI deployments, I would say, start with the business objective. What are you looking to solve before you start figuring out which vendor or which category and which specific, vendor you want to work with? You want to start with, what are the interaction types? You want to map the customer journey. You want to identify which interaction types, where are the pain points? What do you want to leverage? What do you want to automate? From there, you identify what are the sort of the non-negotiable capabilities that you would like to see in the solution. From there, you then decide whether you want to work with sort of one of the incumbent solutions. Then you want to test some of these vendors against real life scenarios. You want to understand the integration depth, create like sort of a governance monitoring framework. And so there's an entire process that you have to follow before you sort of execute or before you start negotiating commercials. And that's where, to Bruce's point, having someone who can help you navigate through this entire ecosystem is where sort of the value comes in.
Well, and Shrey, just before we move on to that too, I would add, like, just on the the pricing models are all, and Nicholas, it'd be good to get your input on this as well. And we have definitely seen this, because some of the pure play, agentic AI vendors, they just provide an orchestration. The voice comes from another vendor. Most don't have a frontier, model. And that's other. And they have completely different pricing models as well. Some are outcome based, some are per minute, some are by call. So trying to rationalize that is not easy either.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Nicholas.
No, I think you're touching a key point. I would echo what Shrey said on the high level selection. It's important to look at the market in its entirety, but very quickly you want to zero in. And you have, before you do the actual point use case selection, you have to figure out a first level of high level business goals that help guide, inform that goal, figure out Do you want a free-baked system where obviously you're going for the type of solution you guys are recommending, or you want to go with a lot of code yourself? And one aspect that I think needs to be integrated in that selection process to figure out the cost model. If you look at the price list, in many cases, you have some well-defined prices, and then you have LLM tokens. And the reality is right now, if you apply LLMs at all levels, costs are getting out of control. So let's start with the new yardstick. In the past, the order of magnitude, don't quote me on that number, for an IVR call was 10 cents. So a chat, 10 cents per interaction. And human-driven interaction, a couple of dollars, right? Can be 3, 5, maybe a little more. It's important to understand that in the environment, that 3, 5 for simple interaction can be lowered to about $1 with an ultra-efficient BPO offshore. Then what we see is today, with the modern Gen AI, modern AI system, the order of magnitude for an AI self-service is more in the 50 cents per interaction. So you have to watch those costs, because I see projects where the bar of $1 per interaction can be crossed. So it's important to think about the yardstick. And the first thing at this stage is to decide what's the good pricing model for you. You have an outcome or resolution pricing model, you have consumption, you have some kind of hybrid. None of them is the panacea, to be honest. Outcome looks great on paper, but there are many cases where it's harder to define. What is a positive outcome? If you think you have closed an interaction in the CRM and there's a callback, what does it mean? So the pricing model is one element. In all cases, you want to make sure that you can model your total cost. I think you want to choose a vendor when you have a kind of a predictable cost equation for the way forward. The modern technologies are great. I gave a glimpse that one voice interaction may use half a dozen different models in parallel. The general purpose NLM, the best in class, might not be the panacea. In some cases, you want to use SLM or carve out for a slew of interaction, a specific cost optimized model. In some cases, you want to keep some interactions on more traditional NLP model so that your costs stay under control. So yes, it's great, but let's not get too exuberant. Let's remember that cost can go up very quickly. Enough said.
Yeah. So in fact, so this is a good time to show like part of the process, because when you said that, what I was thinking, Shrey, and you sort of started getting into it, is once you understand the use cases in the business case, then start cost modeling. Because I think trying to select a vendor based on their pricing is a fool's errand. It's very hard to understand until you're really using it. You know the load that's on that. And so I just say, from a pragmatic perspective, I actually wouldn't use cost as a way to select. And I think maybe it's a good pass over to you, Shrey, in terms of the way to go through the process of a project.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think, and then both of you alluded to this, is at the end of the day, what you're trying to reach is an outcome, right? So like, I think one sort of very common phrase is that you're not using AI to use AI, you're using AI to solve a very real customer problem or sort of achieve an outcome. And so you have to start with understanding what that customer journey is and where exactly do you want to leverage voice AI to either automate or improve customer outcome. From there, you want to then understand which kind of vendor categories would best suit you, right? So that's where you will need to understand whether it's a pure play you want to go for, or it's, an existing CRM solution or a CCaaS. And I think Nicholas alluded to it, but it's also because when you're looking at the total cost, I think the one banana peel that I've seen people constantly slip on is looking at this token pricing. Token pricing by itself means nothing. It has to be looked at in conjunction with the total cost of the entire customer journey. And then even after that, if you've bought a very cheap solution, but it's leading to very poor outcomes, very low containment rates, poor human handoff, missing context passed on sort of to handoffs, customer experience. And so then sort of that solution from a per outcome basis becomes much weaker. And so, which is why you want to start with business objectives. You want to understand what kind of vendor category you want to look at, have a high level understanding of the architecture. From there, you want to do some cost modeling. You want to pilot in a very narrow scope and make sure you're able to prove the value rather than going broad. So yeah, I'd say those are sort of my general thoughts, where your pricing and sort of your negotiation and identification of the vendor needs to happen later. First, you need to have a solution in mind that you're going to go after.
Yeah, we discussed this and wanted to share this slide with everybody to give a bit of a roadmap. I don't know if you want to take it, Shrey, or I'm happy to walk through it, but you sort of started talking about the selection of the use case and the business goals as the first step and what that entails, which is really critical. And I think, and it's probably coming out on this call, is that you could quickly get into analysis paralysis. And that's why I think when you go to select, it's not the end of the world. And Nicholas, you probably have a lot to say on this. You really need to get moving. You should probably get moving on something that's most complete. Then you can optimize. This is not the optimization phase. I don't know if Nicholas, if you want to share any thoughts there.
No, I agree. I think the technology is ready now. So, and a lot of the providers we mentioned, we listed, can get you to first level. There's also an art because when businesses are challenged and overwhelmed by the decision, I advise them to buy some optionality. So let me give you an example. We spoke about the models to be a key factor in the cost. But if you can easily swap out a general purpose NLM, replace it by an SLM that you will have trained on maybe 80% of an initial use case, because you have this experience under your belt, your costs can go down. So
Exactly.
Likewise, when you look at the way those systems are defined, there's a lot of effort, for example, documenting processes, documenting governance. Let's face it, in so many customer service organizations, processes are defined by tribal knowledge. Post it on the agent desktop. So you need to put all this, you need to document it. If it's documented, maybe it's easy to port. And there's way to structure your projects so that it can be something that you move from one system to another, should you have or should you decide for any reason to change. So I think you want to do your due diligence, but you don't want to stop. You want to bake into to your selection the ability to adjust, to turn the dials and make sure all this investment that will carry you from point A to point B can be further carried with maybe a different system from point B to the next. Because I think the initial project is really an initial project. Success is really defined by the ability to continuously optimize and expand the scope of use cases that you address.
That brings up an important point that I wanted to cover, is this, what we call this in infrastructure preparedness. We often get the question of like, should I modernize my CCaaS platform first, or can I go straight into agentic AI? And as a good consultant, I would say it depends. But I think it's important to say that you don't necessarily have to upgrade your platform in the first instance. You probably need to look at some of the technical issues around how your chosen agentic AI vendor is going to work with that infrastructure. I'd argue that it isn't something that you should necessarily have to do in the first case. We think that the first place is go out and try out that tech, hit the basic requirements in terms of integration, but don't let that hold you back. Shrey, it looks like you had some thoughts there.
No, I cannot agree more. I think that you should obviously plan for your roadmap on what you want to execute on, but you don't want to like you said, you don't want to get into an analysis paralysis stage. You want to start with a very narrow scoped use case that you can solve and achieve a very real outcome on before you decide to expand. And so yes, so if you just make complete sort of infrastructure turnarounds just in preparing for a rollout, I think that's setting yourself up for failure. Is to start towards achieve that business outcome and then sort of also have a roadmap in play. But yeah,
I would say that a few years ago, there was this vision. First step is CCaaS. As a byproduct, you have all your data in the cloud. AI is going to be easier. Right now, what I see is, because again, modernization of self-service is job number one, top priority. It's a very focused project, and there's enough to do around that where people don't want to combine an upgrade of the infrastructure and at the same time, modernization of self-service, it might not be the easiest path. Now, at the same time, like you say, while most solution can work technology on premises, you do want to assess, in particular, the telephony infrastructure. We take for granted that SIP is everywhere. That's not always the case. You want also to
Yes.
verify, because sometimes we end up using multiple carriers and you see that latency is not where it needs to be. So somewhere in the project, you do want to do at minimum an assessment of your telephony infrastructure. But the starting point is carve out a self-service project. Don't assume a dependency on having modernized everything and move forward. Yeah.
That sounds good. Yes, I agree. It brought up one thought too that I don't know if we made completely clear yet, is at least my perspective is I've seen a few people really want to move to pure automation, 100% containment. And if that isn't clear, then I don't recommend that at all. I don't think that's possible today. You want to bring in that human agent to handle the complex tasks. I think most people agree with that. I don't know, Nicholas or Shrey, I see you nodding your head. If that wasn't clear, I strongly recommend.
I'm closing on 40 years in this industry. I think it's extremely dangerous to set 100% automation as a goal. If you address 99% or 90%, whatever, and sometimes it may mean that it can be 90% of the interaction with the 10% of that same interaction handled with the assistance of a human agent.
Yeah, exactly.
So I learned over the years that this is the way to look at things. And let's remember that customer experience is how your customers are going to measure you. So if you start to go down the path of brute force automation, you're going to generate a lot of negative byproduct in terms of the experience. A golden rule is you always offer easy access to human. And actually, it's harder than you think, because the expectation, if you spend more time in self-service, is some kind of expectation that the full context is going to be handover, number one. Number two, that you want to make that assistant immediate with a human agent that has the competencies needed, because frankly, in today's world, the intent is very well known through AI. So you have no more excuses not to pick the perfect resource to bridge the gap between what was done in self-service and what is needed by the customer.
I'll pass it on to Shrey, but just to say that's exactly what we're working on too when we help customers deploy. Is I think it's incredibly important to get that context across to both an agentic agent or a human agent, right? Context is critical. Go ahead, Shrey.
No, I was going to echo that as well. The customer doesn't care whether you used AI in your interaction or not. They care about the outcome, and that's what you should do. And so it has to be a blend of how AI can make the customer experience better and make the life easier. And then exactly as Nicholas, you mentioned, which is the human handoff, which comes both, who you're handing off to, but also what context you're passing on so that, the end customer does not have to repeat themselves. So yeah, I think it has to be a blended journey, but it has to optimize for outcomes and not necessarily what percentage of the journey is AI.
Look at what the web was trying to do in its first instance, web self-service. That was full containment. The 800 numbers disappeared. That was a disaster. Chatbots, same thing, a disaster, full containment. I 100% agree. And it hasn't changed. The world is in that respect.
There's a very interesting cautionary tale where McDonald's tried with IBM in 2024. And they said, the entire drive-through experience, you could order purely through AI. And it was a broken experience because you don't take into account the background noise. So it has to be a human assisted is the right order going through. And that's where you need to start from the outcome and then build the solution to get to that, as opposed to just, leveraging AI for the sake of it.
So Salvo is messaging in the background to say we're at time, but I just messaged back to say, can we have an extra 5 minutes or something like that? Because we do have some good questions that people have asked. I'd like to get to them. And maybe I'll hold my question for last. But Salvo, do you want to cover off the questions? Just a
I'll start with the
couple.
first question. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a first question that's come in with regards to containment rates and human handoff. Now, part of this was already discussed and answered, but I'll go through that question once more.
And I'll
Nicholas,
just
this one
add,
is for
if we can
you.
keep the answers to 30 seconds or less, that would be great. It's the fire period now.
Nicholas, this will be directed for you. Vendors often highlight containment rates and cost savings, but rarely the cost of wrong answers. What production metrics should CX buyers demand to measure hallucination and incorrect action rates in voice AI agents? And how should that risk be factored into ROI and human handoff design?
Yeah, I wish there was a silver bullet to answer to the metric. But first of all, I would say this is a fantastic question because too often we look at very simple standard scenarios such as containment rates and we forget the actual resolution. It ties to the conversation we were having about outcome. At the end of the day, and this is one of the good things of all this technology transition, we are rethinking customer service in terms of what's the desired outcome. And once you look at it, you find that there's actually a broad diversity of outcome. Maybe I'm calling for having to check my balance, or I have something much more complicated to do a Roth IRA conversion or something like that. So the challenge to respond to the question is usually the defining metric is the outcome, which ties to the actual workflow or job to be done. And you will find different types of metrics. So one of the things that we haven't touched is usually when you deploy a voice self-service or customer self-service, you accumulate a lot of data. And now all this data, you're going to be able to stitch together the conversation, the actual disposition in whatever system of reference, all this information, you can make sense of it, and you can do some grouping in terms of jobs to be done. Once you have this grouping, which usually helps you define the intent, you can define what are the metrics for measuring success or for measuring drift, which means that a customer conversation is drifting away from resolution. I failed miserably in meeting the 30-second target for responding. It was a tough one.
It was a tough one. I agree.
Shrey, this is for you. For organizations under the EU AI Act, does voice agentic AI vendor selection change materially versus US buyers? Or are the compliance guardrails you recommend the same everywhere?
Yeah, no, that's a great question as well. And I'd say like the first thing I would say is like that's why a partner who can kind of navigate through the journey of which vendor, whether they meet the compliance needs, the regulatory needs, whether they have the right product feature set, that's sort of one important role that they can play. In terms of the large players, my guess is, this most of them would have customers in Europe and would be building around this regulation. Obviously, whether that's risk classification, audit logs. So I would say, players like, for example, partners like Parloa, PolyAI in Europe, I know for a fact do an incredible job at sort of staying ahead of the regulatory changes that come about. But again, that's also like a rapidly evolving part of the journey. So the regulations in sort of the different regions. But if you choose the right partner, I think they will sort of build around that. And we've, for example, with Parloa, I know for a fact that they have.
Great. At this point, I think we're pretty close to time. We'll just maybe some wrap-up thoughts. And I would guess, or what I'd like to ask you both is ready, and what should people expect in terms of outcomes? Like if they embark on a journey like this, what miracles can you promise? No, but realistically, what should people expect if they get on this journey?
Yeah, so the way I look at it, so there's always questions about what's the good containment rate, automation rate, and the answer is really the consulting. It depends. If you check on account balances, it should be close to 90%. So the reality is look at your jobs to be done. And there's today with AI, so many ways to stitch together the data, assemble it, analyze the different jobs to be done, and you will see a starting point. I would say what you should expect for whatever first project is to do a quantum leap. If you are 10%, let's say automation rate, a sliver of your interaction/jobs to be done, you want to shoot for 20%. So something that is material at that level. Don't shoot from 10 to 90%. This is nonsense. Maybe you'll get there, but I don't think you need. The second thing that I keep on hammering, it's all about continuous improvement. So if you get from 10 to 20 and then you stall because the system is too complex, you have to do so many tweaking a lot of your bandwidth is kept maintaining the system, there's a problem. So I'm going back to the three-legged stool. You're going to choose some technology. You're going to choose a tool set. You're going to choose how you approach the life cycle of the project, and you're going to choose a partner. You're going to choose a partner that will bring a methodology, bring some know-how, and this is what should get you. So what you should expect after initial quantum leap is to be able to continuously make step improvement, getting from 10% or 20% to more, expanding with new use cases that don't break what you have already accomplished. That's the way to look at it.
Excellent. That's perfect. Shrey.
No, I think Nicholas covered it beautifully. What I would just say is, I like to think of what to expect in two ways, in two terms, right? So first is technology. I think I have no doubt technology will continue to marvel us week after week. The quality of the models will sort of keep getting better. But I believe what will not change is successful outcomes will only happen if you blend technology with the right kind of execution discipline, which is focusing on business objectives, choosing the right use cases, building the right governance frameworks, continuously improving, as Nicholas said. And so, only when you execute all around that is when you see the jump in outcomes. But if you execute, I'm very, very confident people will see very, very material improvements in sort of outcomes.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think there's anything holding back people from taking that leap today. And I'll just maybe I'll finish up, Selva, last couple minutes here. To say that, Nicholas, you and I go back in this industry a long, long way to the
Thanks for dating me.
Well, you mentioned the 40 years, so it's out of the bag.
Yeah.
In any case, having come from IVR, the early days of speech and text to speech, you remember the intelligent customer front door, we delivered, but it could have been better. Frankly, if you look back at the, how may I help you sort of services, I think today, what I dreamed back then is doable today. Like I've never seen my past.
I think we want to hammer that. I think this technology is different. And you can go through my recording, what I wrote over the 40 years. I didn't say that before. It is really breakthrough, number one. Number two, and I think this is the big difference. In the past, we made progress. But usually after a step progress, we got stalled. Yes. There was a lot of maintenance effort and we couldn't get to this continuous improvement.
You look today, at
that works. That continuous improvement with the right blend, technology, tool set, methodology, and partners, that works and can put you on this ideal, this magical journey, this holy grail. Because anyway, those systems change all the time. So you need to be prepared to follow change. Sorry, I was...
No, that's awesome. Yeah. And that flexibility, I think, again, this isn't like selecting a CCaaS vendor. Once you've made that decision, you're done. I think, obviously you want to pick the best partner, you want to work with them. And if they provide the services, you want to stick with them. But this isn't the end of the road. And I do see a world where there might be more than one vendor. And I'll just maybe end with the fact that, that's what we try and do here at Servion. We thought a lot about how to do this in the best way. So, and we have a process we follow, and it is exactly what, get it out there, iterate. And so we're here to help for that. That's our mission statement. So I wanted to thank Selva for putting this all together for us, and Nicholas and Shrey for your wisdom. I hope people got a lot out of it. I did. So really fantastic. And maybe we'll do this again because this evolving space, and the input you provided has been really, really, I think, really, really helpful to those who are listening in. So thanks so much.
No, thank you.
Thank you both. Thanks all.
Thank you.